Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
Greetings and a warm welcome to today's edition of Business Africa. I'm your host, Afolake Oyinloye. The top stories this week. As the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA nears expiration, African nations push for a 10-year extension amid changing trade dynamics and the future of U.S.-Africa relations. Niamey celebrates the inauguration of the Niger-Benin pipeline, a 1,982-kilometer-long project set to boost oil production from 20,000 to 110,000 barrels per day, promising a significant economic transformation for the nation. Digital connectivity divide threatens African businesses while Ghana leads the way in harnessing cyber economics for growth and transformation. As the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA approaches its September 2025 expiration, African nations are advocating for a 10-year extension, underlining its role in providing duty-free access to the U.S. market. Recent exclusions from the program raise questions about its future impact. We'll provide you with a comprehensive report.
The African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, has shaped U.S.-Africa trade since its inception in 2000. As it nears its September 2025 expiry date, African nations are advocating for a 10-year extension due to its pivotal role in providing duty-free access to the massive U.S. consumer market. In 2022, over $10 billion worth of African exports entered the U.S. duty-free, with South Africa, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar and Ethiopia contributing significantly. However, the removal of Uganda, Gabon, Niger and the Central African Republic raises questions about AGOA's future, especially regarding its impact on small and medium enterprises.
The recent AGOA status changes for some African countries are concerning and could affect SMEs' growth, particularly women. This is where the African Free Trade Area presents a promising alternative, potentially opening up new avenues for trade within the continent.
As South Africa hosted the 20th AGOA Forum, discussions centered on extending the program beyond 2025. AGOA has empowered African businesses, particularly in agriculture and textiles, but it poses challenges in meeting its stringent standards.
Today we're fortunate to have Mr. Alike Sachu, a seasoned business expert, join us from Kenya to shed light on this topic. Good to have you on the show. Mr. Sachu, can you share insight on how AGOA has impacted African export and the development of industries over the years?
I was just looking at a report from UNCTAD, and from 2020 to 2021, just 3 countries were responsible for 71% of all the exports under AGOA. Those 3 countries were South Africa, Nigeria, and Angola. For African countries, it's been advantageous because it gives tariff-free access to the US market, which remains one of the biggest single markets anywhere in the world. But I think, from the perspective of Africa, we want to see more value addition, more beneficiation in this relationship. There have been challenges as well, in the sense that the US demands access to African markets. And for example, particularly in East Africa, there was a lot of unhappiness about the dumping of second-hand clothes, for example. So there have been some disputes and some issues. Of course, you will remember the fracas with South Africa regarding the supply of arms to Russia, which was alleged, and then they were threatening to expel South Africa from the AGOA Treaty. South Africa is the biggest exporter in Africa to the US under this arrangement.
Now, what is the role of AGOA in stimulating African export and economic development, and are there success stories in this regard?
Of course. I mean, it's a preferential arrangement. It gives Africa access. I think it's about 5,000 tariff-free opportunities for Africa to export into the US. Of course, the current export smorgasbord is much narrower, but it is a platform for job creation on the continent. It is a platform for Africa to access the US market in a preferential manner. And I think it's been a success across the board and is an important instrument for Africa and the US in coming closer together. And I think we've seen in the last few weeks a serious commitment out of the US to increase and grow this relationship in the context sometimes, of course, in the US-China competition. This is the US's main platform for engagement with the continent.
Now, how might AGOA and its criteria be adapted to align with the African government and the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Yes, that's a very important organic development to the African Free Trade Agreement. And I think, for Africa and Africans, this is a kind of silver bullet. Of course, the proof is in the pudding of the execution. If we do get to the time when we have a proper free trade agreement that is working across the continent, it will be a silver bullet. It will stimulate growth across the continent and amongst ourselves as well. But I think once that starts to work, I think Africa will see a significant increase in trade with AGOA because we'll just have more efficient markets, which will deliver better priced goods for the global export market, and we'll be able to take better advantage of this agreement. In terms of the Biden administration, and I think the AGOA treaty is the instrument that they're going to use to achieve better alignment and better synchronicity between the US and Africa.
Thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
Pleasure.
In a momentous occasion, Niamey inaugurated a remarkable pipeline paving the way for a new era of prosperity and progress. This pipeline connects Niger to the bustling port of Seme in Benin, marking a significant milestone after 4 years of tireless dedication and investment. Here's more.
Niger has just inaugurated a nearly 2,000-kilometre pipeline. It will enable Niamey to sell its crude oil on the international market for the first time via the port of Semepoji in neighbouring Benin. The new structure will boost oil production from 20,000 to 110,000 barrels a day. From now on, more than 90,000 barrels of crude oil a day will be exported, in addition to the first quantities supplied to the Zinder refinery. To reach this new stage, our countries had to make one of the biggest investments in its history at a total cost of some $5 billion. The export of this oil will generate more than a quarter of the equivalent of Niger's GDP in terms of income for the state, and at least 50% of its tax revenue. The Prime Minister says resources generated by the production will be used exclusively to ensure the development of Niger on the basis of equitable sharing, so that all citizens can benefit. The site is based at Agadem in the desert region of Diffa, some 1,700 kilometers from Niamey. The black gold is extracted by China National Petroleum Corporation. Officially, Niger has reserves of around 2 billion barrels, and it aims to produce 200,000 barrels per day by 2026.
Digital connectivity remains a critical issue in Africa, with half of the population offline. Bridging this gap by 2030 could unlock substantial economic opportunities impacting GDP and various industries. Ghana is already reaping the benefit, focusing on cybersecurity measures for economic development.
Businesses in Africa risk being left behind as digital connectivity remains an issue across the continent. Speaking at the Global Cybersecurity Forum in Riyadh, the chief executive of the Samina Telecommunications Council highlighted the scale of the issue.
In Africa, more or less about 50% of the population are still offline, left behind, as we used to say. And the challenge that we have is by 2030 to bring everyone online. The impact on the GDP of the nation will be positive if we manage to connect everyone. We talk about billions of dollars in terms of business for the enterprise. As you know, digital development, digital economy will affect all the industries, from manufacturing, from agriculture, transportation, banking. One of the best examples is digital financial inclusion through mobile banking. Application as M-Pesa in Kenya has created lots of jobs.
Cautious of the threats that connectivity brings, Ghana's approach stretches to hosting a global conference focusing on cyber development.
Sphere, but for developmental reasons. And I think we look forward to ensure we build a relevant cyber security measures so that we can consolidate the gains that we anticipate in the areas for the benefit of our citizens, but also the businesses that are investing on the continent.
Transcontinent connectivity is no longer just a matter of just digital inclusion or the risk of being left behind, but the potential to unlock cyber dollars and the promise of economic transformation.
And that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you for joining us on Business Africa this week. For more captivating business stories and news, stay tuned to Africanews and Africanews.com.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.